welcome to the TNT podcast hosted by Teen Brunel and Tony Verga. Please find us on YouTube and like and subscribe to our videos.
Yeah, we're going to change that open. So Teen,
what?
Can we go back to...
Okay. So I got into a fight with my daughter last night and she started crying because I said to her, please don't buy anything at the book fair, but she has her own money. She really wants to buy something. I said, at least if you buy something, buy a book. Don't buy any more notebooks. What did she do? She came home with a $10 notebook.
All right. How old's your daughter?
She's 8 years old.
And she has access to money?
She has access to money because when it's her birthday or Christmas and somebody gives her money, she has access to it. And I said to them, if you choose not to have a birthday party, I'll give you $100 in cash. My son always chooses the money.
Okay, so I know where he's from. So this is the deal. I don't have children. I'm just going back to my childhood. I'm 60. When I had money at Christmas, Mom took it, and then she delegated it to me as the year went on, right?
Right.
Oh, you're going out with the guys? Mr. Melnick is taking you guys to the Yankee game? Here's $10 so you could buy hot dogs, and you could buy a hot dog for his kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or $20. I didn't have access to go into my drawer and take out cash and do what I wanted with it. That was crazy to me. That's why I moved out and got a job.
It's because they work, they're actors, and every job that they get $10. When I was 8, I had a job. I cleaned office buildings.
Stop it. Hold on.
Every Sunday.
Wait. You were 8 years old and you had a job.
I had a job. My brothers and sister and I would go clean office buildings. I got $20 a month. And I would spend it, and I would get to go play video games, and I would save all my money and buy clothes over the summer.
Where were you doing office buildings at 8 years old?
Howell, Michigan.
Wow. They have office buildings in Howell?
Yeah.
Was this a family thing?
Yeah, they hired my family to clean the office building. So my job was to vacuum and dust. Then I made $20 a month, and I was very responsible with my money. And I expect my children to do the same. That's why I'm giving them the responsibility to have money so they can choose. If they want a toy, I don't buy it. They need to go out and buy it themselves.
Right, but you're mad at her because she has the sensibilities of an 8-year-old kid.
She said she wants a new iPad, and I said, you need to come up with $200. And her iPad is going to fail soon, so she's spending all her money. She's only got like $100. I said, I'm not getting that iPad for you.
No, she knows Christmas is coming and she's getting an iPad. Well, so that's what you're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with kid stuff.
Right.
I don't deal with kid stuff.
What's your biggest drama?
Health at a certain age, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting my colonoscopy in 2 Yeah, I'm getting my colonoscopy in 2 weeks. I had a weird dream about it last night.
Wait, what are the steps?
Okay, well, at 50, you go for your first one. Mm-hmm. So I did it at 50, I did it at 55, and now I'm doing it at 60. So you go in to the doctor's office. It's a group of doctors. They're all great guys. And this guy happens to be from New York, the doctor who
you
does
only
my
choose New York.
Well, yeah. And he's a cool guy, and his office is cool. So they give you a whole thing of paper. They go, this is what you have to do the day before. You get this medication, you drink it. You can't have any seeds or any nuts 2 days before. You have to eat nothing the day before. Just drink this and clear liquid, and we'll see you there. And I remember we didn't talk about if I'm going to go out completely. Yeah. So I called them up. I said, hey, by the way, you're going to get an anesthesiologist, right? And the woman goes, well, it's $350. I go, the best money I ever spent, because the first 2 times I went out. So I want to go to sleep. So I'm getting ready to do it. I feel great. I don't have any symptoms of anything. But the closer you get to tests, the more you freak out. Like, oh my God. 3 days ago, I had to get my PSA checked because last year it spiked.
What does that stand for?
Your prostate. They do the blood test for the prostate. Okay. So it's normal 1.5, 1.8. Mine spiked to 5.6.
Do men and women get colonoscopy?
Yes, women do at 50. I don't think you're 50 yet. I'm 48. Okay, well, you got 2 years for this beautiful thing. So I took my PSA test, and they call me up Monday. They say, we'll see you Tuesday. And I'm like, damn, I forgot, Mm-hmm. And there was things I was doing. I was walking. I was drinking gallons of pomegranate juice because, you could read things. So I've been just doing a lot of health stuff this summer. I'm walking. I'm going to a trainer. I'm seeing a nutritionist. So I'm dealing with that, and you're dealing with your kid is spending $10 on a used book. It's like it's really totally different.
Yeah.
We don't live the same life.
Of drama at home, and it's usually revolving whatever the kids are going through. Like my son got a shot at the doctor's office yesterday, and he's like, oh, I can't go to Taekwondo today because my arm hurts. And I'm like, what? Your arm hurts? Suck it up. What is going on? You need to go to Taekwondo. It's sparring. What if somebody hits me? So they hit you.
Yeah.
So you hit them. I don't understand.
Yeah.
You have a problem with your arm? Why don't you kick them? He's such a baby about it.
Yeah.
He's 11 years old. I mean, give me a break.
He is a baby, kind of.
You know, I said to him, I always tell him, North Korea. If you were in North Korea, you'd suck it up. I don't see the difference.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. So we're dealing with different things. And when I talk to my sister, she has 3 boys. I have 3 nephews. It's always kid related.
You are so spoily. Like, because they're not your kids. I know you spoil these nephews. And every time you say something
or any kid.
Why don't you just give them that? Why don't you just give them that? It's not so
Yeah,
easy.
well, it's easier for me, right?
Yeah.
I do want to spoil. Like if I see somebody, I remember one time I was on vacation with my girlfriend and we were in Kmart late at night. I don't know why. We were in Page, Arizona. And we just weren't tired. So we're walking around and there's a family in front of us counting quarters and dollar bills to get diapers for their kid.
Oh, no.
And one of the kids grabbed a candy bar, and when they checked out, they rang up the candy bar, and they didn't have enough.
Oh, no.
So they had to put it back, and this little boy was crying. So I bought like 3 candy bars, and I met them in the parking lot, and I gave it to him.
Right.
I cannot stand to see a kid want something.
Right.
I have no kids, so it's easy for me
What
to...
about at Christmas when my daughter wanted that dollhouse for $150, and I'm like, no. And you're like, teen, what kind of mother
you didn't say
are
no. You got the cheap dollhouse. Why not go the extra $70 and get the nice dollhouse?
Because I know it's a waste of resources. Because I know she's not going to be spending all that time on it. She won't know the difference.
Okay.
$60 out.
Well, I get it. You're raising 2 kids. You have a big mortgage payment. You got. I don't live that way.
Right.
I live totally different than you. Than most of my friends, to be honest. Because the friends my age who were married and had kids, they have grandkids they're spoiling now. You know what I mean? I have a lot of friends my age who have several grandchildren.
Well, was there a point in your life where you wanted to get married and have kids, and did that time pass?
I never really wanted to get married and have kids. It was never something that I was like, okay, let me check the boxes. Good job, got it. Got my own place, got it. Parents are getting older and want grandkids. Let me do. I never was really there.
Did you have a relationship in your 30s with somebody that
the girls I broke up with, let's say between 28 and 35, or who broke up with me, they all married the next guy they started to date because they were all ready to. They were ready to be married.
Right.
And I was just like, why am I wasting their time? I'm not looking to get married. My career wasn't settled until I moved to California.
That was more important to you.
Before it was a horrible thing to live in your parents' basement, I didn't want to be that guy. So, I mean, I don't know if I have regrets, but the beauty is I have 3 nephews that I could spoil, and I don't mind spoiling anybody's kids.
You know,
I'd buy your kid the book.
I know, and I'm not going to allow that.
Okay.
One of the, our guest today is Joe Nussbaum, and it's funny enough, how I know Joe's, I worked on the movie Sleepover, which was his first feature.
Great movie.
And I left the film industry right afterwards because I wanted to get married and have kids. And the girls on that show, the production coordinators who were like 40, 50 years old, they said, if you want to get married, you have to leave the industry because you have to travel. I was always, you know, my next job was going to be on location in Louisiana. Right. And I was supposed to like take care of Snoop Dogg. I'm like, I can't do that. You can't have a relationship.
You can't be smoking pot with him.
Right. But you can't be on location 3 months here and 3 months there. You're never going to be good. So I left the film industry in order to focus on having kids. So I was in film for a long time, and then I went to work at a desk job.
Hated it. I bet you hated it.
I don't really hate any job. I'm the sort of person that I used to have to photocopy for a living, and I need to do it 100%. I need to be, and like I tell my kids, I don't care what job you're doing. You need to give it 100%. So,
like when you cleaned that office, that was probably the cleanest office in Howell, Michigan.
I don't like to do anything half-assed.
You believe we're getting questions from listeners already?
All right, all right.
Because it says it right here.
All right, so what's
Am
the
I
question?
right?
Yeah, what's the first
Well,
question?
we're in TV, so
Yeah.
people think we know a lot of stuff. I get a kick that people ask me things like, I don't know. Right? Don't they ask you things like, you're like, how the hell
They
would
do,
I
but
know?
mostly they ask me about Dr. Phil because we've been working with Dr. Phil for a long time. We're both segment directors.
Right.
We're both in the DGA. It's really weird for people to know what a segment director does, which is different from a regular director in television.
A real director.
A real director. Because we work with the guests. We're the first people who meet the guests when they come to Los Angeles.
Right.
And
they tell us their story on tape that they tell total strangers on the phone.
Right.
Right? So we're the first face they see.
Right. And it's really, that becomes very difficult for them because anything you say on the phone is no problem because you can't see them. Now I'm staring at you and asking you, exactly when did you cheat on your wife? Why did you do it? You know.
Yeah. It's tough because people say, oh, so you're a director. If I like the people, I'll say, well, this is what I do.
Right.
If it's just a drive-by, if it's just somebody at a party, I go, yeah. I'm a director.
And I try not to tell them who I work for.
Right.
Because it always causes
Well, no, then they ask you, do you know the guy with the gray hair who had the daughter who lived in the car?
And then now it's, what's Dr. Phil like?
Yeah. Right.
And I always say he is very serious about his work.
He's serious. He is what you think he is.
Yeah, he's very serious about his work.
Does he know you?
100%.
They always say, does he know you? I go, yeah,
I've
we're
been
buddies.
working there.
What are you talking about? Of course he knows me. But apparently people are finding us and asking us questions.
Okay, give me the first question.
Who's the most important person on the TV show? Now, at our show, what do you think?
That's our executive producer, Carla.
Right. Obviously, Phil, right? Dr.
Phil, sure. He trickles down, but she runs the day-to-day. She makes the day-to-day decisions of, yes, this guest, no, that guest. And then she gives it to Dr. Phil, who will then decide. And then she looks at how the story's laid out, how each segment is laid out, and then it will go to him.
But how about your favorite sitcom? I mean, who has, I think...
Well, you know, I used to work in sitcoms.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
See, go ahead.
And I feel like in sitcoms, it's different. It's usually the showrunner. And the showrunner is sometimes the person who created the show, or this is a person who knows how to put a show together, meaning they are the ones who hire the writers and they report to the network.
How is that different than an executive producer?
Because sometimes the head writer can get the executive producer credit just as a credit, but the showrunner will actually always be the executive producer. But then as the years go by and you have to bump the people up in credit, that writer then becomes co-producer, producer, executive producer, depending on where it goes. But for me, it's the showrunner, right? Who is sometimes the creator, but not always, because there are a lot of people who know how to run a show, hire writers, and put the show together with the cast and crew. That's not necessarily the
So
creator.
I've had three main jobs out here. I worked at Hard Copy, I worked at Ripley's Believe It or Not, and I worked at Dr. Phil. I've had executive producers. We never had a showrunner.
Well, that's only for sitcoms because there are, well, also for reality. Reality will have a showrunner as well, but they're the people who hire the crew. But on our side, on talk shows, the executive producer will hire.
Right. Now, the other thing is people always say to me, is the show you work on real?
Yes.
I say,
yes,
of course it's real.
They think we pay the guests. We do not.
I say we might pay them if they miss a day of work, but we're not hiring actors who look like, you know.
These are people who have nowhere else to turn. They're on their last leg. They are desperate for help, and they are now willing to go on TV to bear their soul.
I give them credit for doing that because
Absolutely.
I'm shocked I'm doing this.
Right. When they're scared to tell their story, I say, you know what? You've been dealing with this problem for 7-8 years. It's going to take is 60 minutes. Right? Just do it for 60 minutes and the problem will be over.
Well, tell people, like when I watch reality shows, you know, I get like a lot of the reality is faux reality, or I hate to say fake reality because there is an element to it. But what's the difference between a scripted and non-scripted show, right? Scripted, you're paying writers like who we had last week.
Correct. Jay Kogan.
Yeah, I love him. But like those guys.
Jay writes all of the dialogue. He creates the character. Whereas in non-scripted, the characters are real, they have been hand selected because they have big personalities. And they have a certain story, and we help that story along to create more drama, meaning we'll time it so if you have 3 issues come up in a row, we'll time it so we don't see those 3 issues in a row. It'll be like per segment.
You know, we have one of the people who works at the show. You won't know her, so I'm not even going to mention it.
Because I don't know anybody.
And she's been there 2 seasons, but do you know Elise? Elise used to work at Dr. Pol, the incredible Dr. Pol. The veterinary show.
Oh, okay. Got it.
It's real reality.
Right.
They stay there with a crew, and when people come in because, Puddles the dog has a problem, they'll sign off.
Right.
So that's real reality. It's not faux reality. It's real stuff happening.
I worked on Bridezillas.
Okay.
And that was a reality show where this person is really going to get married, and I track them during that time. But there were things that I would not do. But for instance, on the day of the wedding, I see a rip in her dress. And I'm like, I'm going to keep that to myself until the time comes. And then when her mother showed up and everybody's happy, I said to her mother, gosh, is that a rip in the dress? And she's like, oh my God, there's a rip. And then that causes drama. So it's there. I just time it and I can shoot that and make it more dramatic.
Well, see, a lot of people who are watching think you might have ripped the dress.
Right, no. You can't do that. Because, I mean, just for me, and maybe it's because of where we come from Dr. Phil, that we cannot create false drama.
I had lunch with a friend the other day, a boyfriend and girlfriend I just started to get to know. They would come into the coffee shop. He went to work. So it was just me and her having coffee. And I was asking her questions and her eyes started to well up and she was crying.
Oh, no.
I asked about an ex-boyfriend.
Oh, no.
And she goes, excuse me, but do you do this at work? I said, I'm sorry. She was crying in the middle of a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because she was telling me about her ex-boyfriend.
I did that too. There was a woman at a restaurant crying and I said to her, is there anything I can help you with? And then I spent 20 minutes and she's like, you're so good at this. Are you a psychiatrist?
We can make anybody cry.
Yeah, I know.
That's what we do, right? I mean, we're talking to people who are on the edge.
Yeah. We push buttons only because, I know you want to say it and you're scared to say it. So we're button pushers.
Well, I'm happy with what I do in general. Maybe 10 years ago, I would have tried to go into the episodic route, but I'm happy.
I love doing what I do because I love the crew, the core crew of people we work with, the cameramen, the editors, and even the producers. And I feel like I'm in the industry. This is what I've always wanted to do. Work in the entertainment industry, but still be helpful.
Right.
When I was in film, it was sort of an evil feeling of I'm making entertainment. And I didn't like the feeling of having to be fake. So it wasn't a good job. But when I found Dr. Phil, it was like, this is what I want. I want to still help people. Even though it's entertainment, I know there's somebody watching who is going to be helped by this show.
It's always a bonus. It's always a bonus if the people coming on will accept the help.
Yeah.
Then I feel like, wow, you know what? I don't think of it in terms of big picture, are we going to get a number? I think about it I think we did something good for these people. Yeah. That's what you want.
All right. I mean, a lot of times people think it's exploitive because you're showing them at their worst, but they don't see it until they see it on TV.
Right.
All right. No one realizes how bad their anorexia is until we get them on TV and they're like, oh, that's what I look like. Yeah. Or you're an alcoholic and you beat your dog, and that is not a good thing.
Yeah. I remember when I was at Hard Copy, my first job was at Hard Copy. It was a tabloid show. We had somebody broke into a house, shot 2 people and killed their dog.
Oh, God.
And as they were doing the perp walk, they're like, do you have anything to say? The guy said, I didn't shoot a dog. I'm thinking, wow, this guy's very aware of his, he could be a murderer, but you can't shoot a dog.
Okay, so today we have Joe Nussbaum, who is the director of Just Add Magic. Joe's a writer, producer. He has had over 20 credits. Of course, his main thing is directing. He broke into the industry by writing and directing the cult classic indie short George Lucas in Love, which led to his first feature, Sleepover, and that starred it starred Alexa Vega, but it was also Brie Larson's first film. Mm-hmm. Steve Carell was in it. Jane Lynch was in it before they were anybody. And he's gone on to become the go-to director for kids in TV and movies. And
now, how do you know him?
I know him because I worked on Sleepover. I was the assistant production manager. assistant to the production manager. Let's be clear on that.
Okay.
And so I handled getting the crew together. I would be on set. And then I also did a stunt.
Really?
On Sleepover. Yes, yes. This is where the 15 seconds of fame could come in, Tony. If somebody can find me, I'm on the gag portion of the DVD of Sleepover. And my job was, there was a stunt girl on a skateboard going down a hill, and me and another girl were supposed to catch her. So we were down at the hill, and she bowled us over like pins, and yeah.
So did you get hurt?
No, I didn't get hurt. We stood back up and did it again, but it was pretty great. It was fun. But Sleepover was really great because it was one of Steve Carell's first films. And I remember at the wrap party, he didn't know anybody. So he sat down with the assistants and hung out with us.
Right.
And so he was just the nicest guy. There were a lot of big names on that.
He'll have good memories of that, Joel, probably.
Yeah, because that was his first feature film. We didn't know if he could do it. We were like, this guy just came out of film school, right. And all he did was a short.
Right.
So we will talk to Joe in just a minute. You got started at a young age.
I did. I made a short film when I was 26 that got me a lot of attention and started everything out.
Now, did you do that in film school at USC, or did you do it when you left film school?
I was already out of film school, so I graduated in 1996 and started working as an assistant in development at a company called Beacon Pictures, and worked there for about 2 years, answering phones, making appointments, reading scripts, doing notes, sitting in on a lot of meetings, which was great. And then after about 2 years, I found an opportunity to go work at a post house that was making trailers and TV spots. And started working there as a PA and worked my way up quickly to writing and producing trailers and TV spots, which was a job I loved. And then after working there for about 9 or 10 months, that's when we shot the short, George Lucas in Love. So I was 3 years out of film school, but I was working with a lot of people who I had been in film school with, and also people who I had met along the way, both at the production company and at the trailer house.
When you got out of film school, I know what it was like for me to get into TV. The others, I wasn't film. We had to do what you had to do to get an experience. Were you expecting the next 2 or 3 years to go the way they went for you? Like when you got out of film school, did you know what to expect? And did it go the way you thought it would go? Or was it like, what the hell am I doing here?
No, I think I definitely knew what to expect. I remember I was just finishing up my junior year. And a friend of mine who was 1 year older and who was just graduating said to me, if you want a job when you graduate, you have to intern this summer at a production company.
Right.
And it was great advice. And I don't know how I've been able to somehow suss out in general when someone gives me a really good piece of advice and latch on to it. Because you get a lot of advice in this business. But something about the way he said it.
Right.
Just sounded like this guy knows what he's talking about. He didn't say, go find a set to work on. He didn't say, go, help out on 10 student films this summer.
Right.
He said, go to a production company specifically.
I got out of film school. They told me to go work in the mailroom at William Morris.
That's good advice too.
Yeah, but I wound up working at Innovative Artists as an agent's assistant for a long time.
It's good advice. And I give that advice all the time. I say, get a day job either at a production company, management company, agency, network, studio, somewhere where you can really see what goes on and get paid and get benefits and get your feet underneath you. I often tell people, like, a lot of film school kids have this dream of working on set. And I say, look, if you want to do an internship on a set because you want to be around it and see, special effects, explosions, and go knock on the door of a trailer of a big star and tell them they're ready for them. Like, it's cool. It's fun. Like, they should do it, but don't expect that to be the career path unless you want to be an AD.
Right.
Because it's not, in my opinion, a career path towards being a writer, producer, director. Neither really is working at those companies, but the difference is working at those companies will actually show you what gets made, why, and how,
Right.
and give you an eye into the correct side of the business.
Right.
It sounds like the correct side of the business for someone who wants to make movies or TV is on set.
Right.
But it's not. Because you're not going to learn anything there except set protocol and set etiquette,
Right.
which you can learn in one day.
Yeah.
When you get hired to direct because you wrote a great script or made a great short and have connections from working in a mailroom. Like
Yes.
what a PA does versus what, whatever assistant prop person does, you can learn in 5 minutes.
So how did the short film launch you? Because it got a lot of buzz at the time that you made it, and it got you an agent, right?
Yeah. So part this ties right into what I'm saying. So I had a whole group of friends, colleagues, collaborators, whatever you want to call them, who were all in this entry-level position at agencies and production companies and all this stuff. And so that really helped get the short out there.
Right.
And almost immediately I signed with a manager and they helped me find an agent. I signed with an agent. And then of course, those reps were working to get the short out there as well. And I just took a ton of general meetings. They set me up at a commercial company. I started directing commercials. I started getting attached. Yeah, I started getting attached to direct features, developing features. So
it is so rare to be able to get your first feature that you did not write.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when a handful of people who were doing shorts were given features for sure, or I shouldn't say given.
Given the chance to direct.
Right, but hired to do features. And I was probably attached to 6 or 7 studio features over the course of 4 or 5 years before I got the first film greenlit. And even after working 2 years in development and thinking that I knew what was going on, it was still an education for me and how hard it was to get a movie greenlit.
George Lucas in Love, when you wrote that, did you feel like there's a lot more pressure? Like you're using... This guy's God, right? This guy's the biggest name in Hollywood, maybe at the time?
No,
Still?
Not exactly. I mean, it all started with trying to come up with a good idea for a short.
Right.
And my friend Tim Dowling had just seen Shakespeare in Love. And I had seen the trailers for Shakespeare in Love. And the big joke of the trailer is he's trying to write Romeo and Juliet, but everything around him is Romeo and Juliet and is all his plays, but he can't see it, right? Really, the short we made is basically a spoof of a commercial for Shakespeare in Love. Because the whole story of Shakespeare in Love is way more complicated, right? With Gwyneth pretending to be a man, blah, 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 blah. But at least 1 or 2 of the commercials and trailers, the main joke was, hey, it's all around him and he can't tell. That's the entire concept of George Lucas in Love. So Tim was like, we should do a short that parodies Shakespeare in Love, which is ironic because it's sort of already a parody in a way.
Right.
And his first idea was we should do Joe Esterhaus in Love. that this young Joe Esterhaus has writer's block, just like young Shakespeare had writer's block, and he's trying to come up with an idea for a movie. And meanwhile, like Showgirls and Basic Instinct and all this stuff is all around him, Starship Troopers, but he can't see it. And so really, this whole idea didn't stem from George Lucas or our love of Star Wars at all.
Okay.
It all stemmed from Shakespeare in Love and what we thought was a good idea for a short. And we went through a couple more iterations. I didn't really take to the Joe Esterhaus idea because he wasn't really, I certainly knew who he was, but it wasn't really a touchstone for me. And then I thought about Stephen King in Love, which I thought would have been really funny with a car like Christine and a dog like Cujo and a prom date, and all this, and a pet who dies. But like, again, and that might have been great, but Stephen King wasn't a big touchstone for me either. I'm not like a horror fanatic. I'm not a Stephen King fanatic. And so we kept talking. We talked about Spielberg. We were probably close on Spielberg. Mm-hmm. And then because we thought of Spielberg, then we thought of Lucas. And this was a time, George Lucas so this was like the end of 1998. And that's when Shakespeare in Love came out, the fall of 98. Mm-hmm. And Lucas hadn't really been heard from much. Like if you remember in the mid-90s, early 90s, mid-90s, Lucas was a recluse. Mm-hmm. Like he was up there making billions, creating ILM and revolutionizing special effects and whatever he was doing.
He was stuck in Skywalker Ranch. No one ever saw him.
But no one talked about George Lucas until he decided to make the prequels. Or actually, I take that back. They started talking about him in the mid-90s when he released the special editions.
Right.
And then he said, I'm making the prequels. So this was right as we were finally starting to see the first trailers for Phantom Menace, is right when we were talking about this.
Okay.
And suddenly this guy whose face really hadn't been out there was like I remember vividly at the newsstand him being on the cover of Wired in his plaid shirt with his gray beard and really like iconic look, his glasses. And he was like, oh, maybe we could make a short about George Lucas. Like maybe people do kind of know who he is and maybe he is putting himself back in the public eye. But I don't think anyone would have made a short about George Lucas in 1995.
Right.
Not that Star Wars wasn't as big then. Star Wars has always been big, but it was like he just wasn't in the zeitgeist. And so it was like, we could do this. We could do George Lucas. And certainly once we had that idea, the ideas for the jokes in the short came a lot faster.
Right.
Because I did worship Star Wars growing up, and so did Tim, and so did my other co-writer, Danny Shear. So it was like, a Yoda joke, a Jabba joke, a Ben joke, a Princess Leia joke, a cut off hand joke. Like all the jokes were immediate, right? So, but even then we were like, all right, we hope people get this. We hope people like this. We weren't really thinking, oh, we have to be careful. The only part about being careful was, okay, we're making him a character. Is there any rule against that? And we double checked with someone who knew a lawyer and they were like, no, parody makes it totally fine. You're good to go. And then it took us forever, as it probably often does with short films and short projects and anything where you're sort of pulling money out of your pocket, to really pull the trigger on it. And so the months kind of went by, January, February, March, April. And we knew that Phantom Menace was coming out at the end of May. And we were honestly worried that if we didn't get this done by Phantom Menace, no one would give a crap about George Lucas 2 weeks later, which was stupid in retrospect.
Right. But it gave you something to shoot for.
Yeah,
it gave you a real timeline.
Yeah. So about 2 weeks before we were going to shoot, and we had actually started, I had started writing checks. This big article came out in the LA Times, I think it was in the calendar section, and it was all about Star Wars spoofs. This sort of secret world of Star Wars spoofs that people were shooting in their basements and garages, starting with Hardware Wars, which I knew about from the 70s. But then, like, I guess people were using video cameras and what have you. And they talked about how incredibly cheap they were and how many of them there were. And here we were about to do one, which we thought was great, and we were going to spend $25,000 on it. And the article made a big point of how people spent $100 on theirs or $200. And I don't know where anyone could see them, though, because the internet wasn't viable for really streaming video yet.
It wasn't like it is now.
No, there was no YouTube. And like if you wanted to watch something that was longer than 10 seconds, it took forever to download. So I guess they were just on bootleg VHS tapes and people were making little collections of them. But I thought we were making the biggest mistake ever, that I was making the biggest mistake in my life, because everyone apparently had a Star Wars spoof. They were spending 10 cents on them. No one was going to care. I was lighting my money on fire. But somehow, either we were too far along to pull out, or I just said, I hope I'm wrong. And we shot the short and we put it together.
It was the quality of the short, though, that really made the difference. And actually, when I started working on Sleepover, before I even met you, we had to watch it. We were like, listen, we got this guy, Nussbaum. He's new. He's super young. We don't know if he's going to be able to pull this off. Let's just watch this to be sure if he's any good.
Right.
And I remember, who was it? Was it Michael? I forgot who the producer was, but Jeremiah was on it. We watched it, and he was like, this is really good. Maybe this kid has got some talent. So, but it was great. It was really high quality. Like it wasn't just a short film.
And that's what carried us through. But when you're about to make something, you never know.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you hear from Mr. Lucas after the?
I did. Yeah, I got a letter from him, saying that he really liked it. He thought it was funny, and yeah, it's framed. It's on my wall. It was a big moment for sure.
That's great.
And then I met him also, but maybe 4 or 5 years later, I met him on a fluke at Telluride, and he was great. He was very complimentary, and it was really cool.
Yeah, because like my first thought is that could go wrong too.
Sure.
If you do something and it's like, what a piece of shit that was. You know, like that would be my thing. Like when you see this, it's like, even though at the time he wasn't who he is now, right?
Right.
I would worry, like, I really have to do a good job by this guy, because I would hate, not even if he just, not that he would say anything, but even if he didn't like it, that would be heart-wrenching for me. But
I don't think it occurred
lucky.
to any of us that he would see it.
Really?
Or care or not.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably 'cause he was so big.
You can't think your short is going to get seen by thousands of people. We just figured, I was just trying to make a calling card that I could show, to people who were hiring directors. There was no such thing as going viral really then.
Right. Well, you must have did the right thing, because directors saw it and liked it.
Yeah. Tell me about the day before your first day on set as the director of your first feature film. You're about to go. This is it. Everyone's going to be looking at you.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is I had worked professionally as a director before the feature. So I had done about 36 commercials over the course of 3 or 4 years. So I was used to walking onto a tech scout and having everyone turn their heads to me and wait for what I was going to say about where we were going to shoot. And I although the first few times that happened, it was very nerve-wracking. And I was used to walking on set in the morning and having everyone turn their heads to me and say, and wait for me to say what we're doing. So it wasn't really new. And the other great thing about a feature, is you do prep, right?
Yeah.
You do prep for 8
months.
I mean, on a small movie like the movies I've done, it's like 8 to 10 weeks of prep. It's not like Pirates of the Caribbean where they prep it for a year or whatever. But like, the nice thing about prep is when you start out in prep, it's just a conversation with the producer and it's chill. And then you go on a couple location scouts and maybe it's just you and the DP and you start honing what you're going to say, and you get to sit down with just you and a storyboard artist and think things through. And then maybe you have a couple small creative meetings with just you, the producer, and the production designer. And then over the course of those weeks, meetings that were 3 people turn into meetings with 5 people, turn into meetings with 10 people, turn into meetings with 50 people. And so by the time you're on set with 100 people, you've grown into it, and so you're not going from just picturing the movie in your head one day to being on set,
bam,
with $150,000 worth of
You knew before going on that first day, like where the shot was.
I built to it, and had already sort of had practice saying it and tell, you know what I mean? It's like you don't go from singing in your shower to singing at the Hollywood Bowl, right? You play a tiny club and then you play a small, so unless it's A Star Is Born, right?
But you're dealing with major talent. I don't want to say for
but
the
even
first
them
time.
I had met, right? So
how involved were you in casting?
Read. First there was casting, there was a table read, we did 2 weeks of rehearsal. So I'm not meeting them for the first time there either. The closest thing to that actually is directing episodic television.
Right.
Because when you're a guest director on a TV show, you are often meeting the actor for the first time in the morning of the first day. I try to always meet them during prep and say hello, but it's usually just a handshake. But again, if you're directing episodic television, there's a good chance you've done a lot of directing, like I have. So it helps.
But on Sleepover, you had how many kids? 8. Well, at the time, it was Jeff Green was the biggest name, and
Jeff Garland.
Jeff Garland.
Green's his character on Curb, right? Jeff Green.
Yeah, Jeff Garland and Jane Lynch.
And Steve Carell, yeah.
But at that time, Steve Carell, it was
Jane Lynch
second.
They were all, none of them were
small.
big deal. Yeah, I mean, Jane Lynch had done, some Christopher Guest movies.
Right. And Steve Carell, this is like his second film.
I mean, Steve Carell, it's funny, I met with him. We went and had a drink and talked about it. And he told me that this was the first role that he had not auditioned for. It was his first offered role.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And he's a great guy, and he was really easy to deal with. So.
And you were hands-on in the casting for the girls,
right?
Oh,
God, yeah.
Well, Alexa Vega, was she already chosen?
She was, yes. But I still met her, and I can't remember if we did chemistry reads.
Because this was supposed to be a vehicle for her.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, vehicle's a strong word, but she was definitely supposed to anchor the cast as someone who kids knew.
Right. But then you got Brie Larson, and this was was this her first
I think
film?
it was her second or third. Yeah, but she was a small part.
Yeah.
She did great. I mean, all the kids did great.
But then they became huge. Sarah Paxton,
Some of them did, yeah.
and Brie, and Hunter, and Evan.
Yep.
They became
they all
big.
they all did great work. And Scout had some moments where she was doing really great stuff as well.
Even Sean Ferris.
Sean Ferris anchored 2 different TV shows, I think.
So you did a good selection of...
We had amazing casting directors. And actually, credit where credit's due, one of the producers, the producer, I should say, Chuck Weinstock, he has an amazing eye for casting. Amazing eye for casting. He really,
That's right.
really, amazing eye for material and amazing eye for casting.
Yeah. Did you enjoy that first film? How did you feel?
I loved it. I loved every second of it. I remember, oddly, people kept asking me while I was shooting, which is a question I didn't expect. They kept asking, are you learning a lot? And and my answer, I don't know where people come up with that from.
It's a little insulting.
It is a little insulting.
I never took it as an insult, but I always said, I don't think so. And then, because I didn't really think about it, and then I got in the editing room, and then I learned a lot. And then I learned, because you can't really learn anything on set because you're just trying to make your days. Mm-hmm. And then I got in the editing room, and that's where I realized, like, the 800 million things I wish I had done differently.
When you're in the editing room, what were you thinking about? Was it acting choices that you should have done different? Was it setup choices?
It was kind of everything. It was a lot of coverage that I wished I had gotten mostly, and moments that I wished I had played differently, and beats that I thought weren't coming together. It's funny, I think despite the fact that everyone talks about directors and there's a lot of hero worship of the great directors, obviously, the Tarantinos and the Scorseses and the Spielbergs and the Nolans and the Camerons, despite all the sort of director love, I'm not sure people really understand what a director does. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, considering it's seen as like the position in filmmaking. Mm-hmm. But like even people will say to me as a great compliment, like, that scene looked great. And I'm like, of course, I'm not hopefully too much of a jerk when I get a compliment.
Right.
But I kind of smile and I'm like, okay, thanks.
Talk to the DP.
Like I don't take that as the what I'm trying. Right. There's a DP, there's a production designer, there's the whole, there's the location that you've chosen. Like so much of that, wardrobe, hair and makeup, like to me, the director's biggest job is to create the moment. So if it's a scene where it always better be a scene where something is supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. 2 people are supposed to have a fight. 2 people are supposed to fall in love. Someone is supposed to discover something. Someone is supposed to almost get caught but get away. Right. Whatever that moment is that is happening in the scene, it's the director's job to actually make it happen. And for those of you who've been around a first blocking rehearsal, the actors can say every word they're supposed to say. And every line of the scene description can be followed. And the actors can even do it well. And you can still sit there and go, that didn't happen. Like the scene didn't take place.
Right, that's a little spark.
It didn't, exactly. It didn't transpire before our eyes. Mm-hmm. And the great directors know how to do that. And it's a combination of a lot of things. The correct coverage, the correct pacing, the correct performances, a prop choice, a blocking choice. Like it's so many little choices that just make you feel like you're watching something happen in front of you, and that thing that's happening is captivating. And that's the director's job. And one of their biggest tools to do that job is the actor's performance, obviously. Right. But it's like, I think the biggest thing I learned on Sleepover was the times when I thought that the thing had happened and I had captured it, and I got in the editing room and it wasn't the case for lots of different reasons.
So as you do this more, and you've been doing this, are you better at getting while it's happening? Now I have it. Like now I have it. What transpires in you? What makes you see it now where you did? other than repetition and doing these scenes over.
It's practice makes better.
Practice.
I'm not going to say practice makes perfect because I'm certainly far
because that's such an intangible thing, right?
It is. But you have to keep your eye on that. One of the things, and I teach directing at USC Film School too, and one of the things I say is like when you're sitting there watching the scene, you really, and this is one of the hardest things for me to do, and it's very hard for a lot of directors to do this, you have to divorce yourself from being the person who told them what to do and is making it happen, and be the audience. From when you say action till you say cut, you have to watch it like you're the audience and decide, was it there? Was it good? Were you moved? Was it right? As opposed to wrapping yourself up and tightening yourself up and just be like, oh, come on, say it the way I want you to say it the way I want you to say it. And then when they say it, you're like, yes, good, okay. Make sure the camera pans left there. Yes, it panned left. But you have to try to remove that grip, right? You have to loosen your grip. This is good life advice too, right? It's very zen. It's very zen, right? And I'm not a very zen person, so sometimes I suck at it. But you have to like step out of yourself, step back. Literally, sometimes I'll relax my body and be like, I'm just gonna watch this like I'm watching a show at home. Like it's almost like defocusing your eyes a little bit and just like watching it and deciding, did it happen or didn't it happen? As opposed to, did they do what I want? Are they doing what I want? Yes, they did what I want. Because you have to, and it's hard. And actually one of the things I really love about the job I've done on my last 2 TV series is I'm a director of a lot of the episodes, but I'm also an EP who sits in the back row at Video Village, and I can help be that extra set of eyes for the director to help see what's happening and what's not happening. And I am completely divorced from the investment because I didn't tell the actor how to say it. And I didn't tell the camera operator where to move the camera and when. So I can literally watch things unfold and judge them in that way. And hopefully in a very collaborative, non-overbearing way, although sometimes I fail at that, I can then tell the director what I think is missing and give them helpful notes. And it's also one of the things I love about TV, because in TV, even when I'm an episodic director and I'm not a producer on the show, hopefully I have the writer of the episode or the showrunner of the show sitting with me, and they can watch with a slightly removed focus and help.
Before we get to the TV, I have a question about on the set. Do people sell you on "we got it"? Like when you're looking at this happen?
Yes.
Does an AD, does a cameraman, does somebody say that was great? And you're like, well, I don't want to piss these people off. It's been a long. I mean, how much of that is you saying no? We don't have it. We have to do it again. Like you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh no, I know. I've been there behind the scenes with the producer, and they're like, this guy. This director.
Oh yeah, everyone's favorite pastime on a set is saying what an idiot the director is. What I said at the beginning,
we got it 3 times already.
Yeah.
Right. What I said at the beginning of the interview was, one of the pieces of advice I give is don't go work on a set. I did work on a couple sets. I was an intern on a couple low budget movies when I was in school. Because like I said earlier, I wanted to see things blow up and big stars walk out of trailers and all that stuff. And on both those movies, I witnessed everyone nonstop saying what a moron the director was. And it's just what people do. And the thing is, you just have to come to live with it and say, they don't see what you're seeing.
Exactly. Right.
And when you get in the editing room, it's only going to be worse.
Right.
And you have to, now you can be wrong sometimes. There have been times that I've gone again and again and used take 1. Because people make mistakes and sometimes you're wrong. But other times I've used take 7 and thanked God Almighty that I did 7 takes, because there was nothing usable until take 7.
Right.
So it goes both ways.
And now on Just Add Magic, is that where you became the executive producer?
That was my first producing gig, yeah.
And tell me how that happened. Was it after several seasons?
No, it's because I directed the pilot. Mm-hmm. And on the pilot, we didn't really have a showrunner per se. It was based on a book, so there was no real creator.
Did you have a head writer?
We just had the pair of writers who wrote the pilot, who did a nice job, but they were not really put into that position. That wasn't the mantle they were given.
Right.
And and things went well, and I worked really, really closely with the Amazon executives, and sort of served as I don't want to say a de facto showrunner, but I was among the people who were doing the job of a showrunner. And so when it came time to start the series, I think they felt very comfortable giving me the EP credit and EP responsibility, but I wasn't the showrunner. We then hired a showrunner because we needed one. We needed someone to really shepherd the writer's room, and we hired a fantastic guy named Andrew Orenstein, and he and I were the EPs on the show, and he was the showrunner, and he did a great job, and I loved collaborating with him.
Now, what is that like? I mean, you know, you never work with kids, you never work with animals. You know, you always hear that kids and animals. Are these kids older than the kids they're talking? I mean, it seems like a precocious 10-year-old.
I mean, I have worked with a 5-year-old once, and
boy.
It on a commercial actually, and it was near impossible. You know, that's when you have to like pretend other things, like think about a lollipop or whatever it is.
Were you surprised when Just Add Magic became a big hit? I think it did become a big hit because everybody
People do talk about it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. To me, it's a huge miracle that anything succeeds ever. And so,
right. Yeah. With
that's
number of
another
shows
thing.
Out there.
You know, Dennis Miller, the comedian, always says show business. What people don't hear is the business part of the show.
Right.
It is so difficult for somebody to have an idea, to get funding, to get done, and to get done well. That's not easy. And like you say, you're surprised anything gets. I'm shocked how much stuff does get made and how much quality stuff there is. It's not easy.
Right. I mean, people think there's the good shows that they like and there's the bad shows that they don't like, and put together, that's all the shows.
Right.
But what they don't understand is there's like the dozens of pilots that get made that don't go to series, the hundreds of scripts that don't go to pilot, the thousands of scripts that don't get bought. Like there's so much. It's
the hundreds of thousands of sizzle reels out there, or whatever, or actors. It's a crazy town.
Looking back on your career, and you don't have to name any names. Do you remember like a specific difficult actor to work with, and how did you manage it?
I've been pretty fortunate. Everyone who I've been sort of deeply involved with in terms of like again and again and again have been pretty darn good. A couple times when I've only worked with an actor in passing, there have been a few rough spots. My attitude is always just try to stay focused on the work. Try not to get too apologetic and make a whole federal thing about it and be like trying to win their love back.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's an instinct as a people pleaser to want to do that, but it's kind of the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
And just accept like, okay, they don't like me, or they're not having any of this. So I'm just going to put my head down and
you just keep moving
and be as about the work as I can possibly be. And hopefully they can at least respect that.
Tina, I hope you learned a lot today.
I did learn a lot. I thought it was fantastic.
I think my takeaway from this is it's just not that easy. There's a lot of moving parts, and you have to have good casting people. You have to have not good, because there's a lot of good casting. No. You have to have great casting people, great directors, great DPs. It is not easy. And when you're dealing with kids, and to me, I'm a little older than you, so anybody 15 is a kid.
Oh, yeah, they're kids to me.
That is tough to elicit something out of these kids.
But there is one great thing about working with kids, which is, there's a lot of great things about working with kids, but one of my favorite things is you often don't get that clock punching fatigue that you can get on a show where everyone's just kind of groaning and going through the motions, because in general, even after 20 episodes, they're really happy to be there, and they're singing some silly song to each other, and they're dancing around, and part of it is because they only work 9 hours a day, which is great, so that they can keep their energy up, and they're this fun presence, and it's like hard to be a miserable drone feeling.
Curmudgeon-y.
When you've got this sort of kid who's like giggling and laughing and having fun right up until, you roll the camera. And so I love the presence of kids on a set. and everyone's sort of, and you see all the sort of moms and dads on the crew step into that mode, and it's nice. It creates a really nice feel. Of course, there's a whole downside to kid actors and all that stuff that we don't have to get
You mean
into.
the stage moms team?
No, what I mean is like the rough history of what happens to kid actors, the different strokes of it.
That'll be our next show. Like in 5 years, we'll be doing something with you.
But like in general, I find it's a huge net positive, and it creates a really wonderful feel around the set.
Well, Joe, I wanted to thank you for coming. I've learned so much. We had a lot of fun.
Joe, you're
It was
great.
my pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm blown away every time somebody sits there and discusses their job. It's not easy. It's really not easy, and you must make it seem easy because your stuff is good.
Only on my good days. Thank you.